Today, in this hall here in Canada's largest city, Toronto, I would like to offer my greetings to the community of the Sangha, the source of refuge, and also to all my friends, and to all of my Dharma friends who have traveled here from far away. And Tashdilek to everyone. So this year, I did not have the opportunity to come in person to this teachings in Toronto, and I do feel a great deal of regret, and I'm very sorry about it. In my mind, I feel very, very sorry. I'm deeply sorry. And the reason is that we arranged the program several months ago. And in particular, there are many people who came specifically for this event from far away. They have given a lot, whether in terms of expense or in terms of their physical and verbal efforts. And I feel that in the end, I was unable to come. I was extremely sorry about that. However, just when I was about to depart, the doctor advised me that because of my physical condition, it would be best not to fly in an airplane. That's what the doctor advised me, and for this reason, for the time being, I must postpone my travels. But I thought that it would be best to continue with the teaching. And I feel a bit of a resolve and enthusiasm to do this. The reason is that so many people have come, and I don't want to let them go empty-handed. The main thing is that you have gathered for this teaching to listen to the words of the Buddha and the Buddha Dharma, not particularly for the sake of me, who just a single human being. And so for this reason, I think it would be best to continue with the teaching and listening to the Dharma. And it would be even better than if I were to actually have come. So therefore, I will give a short teaching, as we had already planned, on the way to do the practice of Avalokiteshvara, all-pervading benefit of beings. So we have that brief opportunity to teach and to listen to the Dharma. So in general, all of us sentient beings that means everyone who has a mind, not only humans, but all sentient beings, are all the same in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. To give an example, it's like a traveler is going in a vehicle. Going in a ship. Those travelers might be of any age, rich or poor, or beautiful or ugly. But no matter how different their external appearances, all of the people in the vessel are going on the same place. They're going to the same place, the same destination. It's like that with all of us sentient beings. All the different kinds of beings, like among us humans, there are people of many different color faces and various different shapes. Among all animals, even greater. All of them merely have a different external appearance. Inside, the feelings in their minds, or the feelings of pleasure and pain, are the same. All are the same in having the wish to be happy and the wish to be free of pain. So everyone it's a different external appearance. Internally, the feelings of pleasure and pain are exactly the same. We are all the same in wanting to be happy and wanting to be free from pain. even though we want happiness, we have difficulty in obtaining happiness. We want to be free of suffering, but we have difficulties in freeing ourselves from suffering. The main reason for these difficulties is that even though we want to find happiness, we don't know what the causes of happiness are. And so we don't know how to make effort toward the causes of happiness. Likewise, all beings wish to abandon suffering and be free of it, but they do not know fundamentally what the cause of suffering is. For example, when we get sick, we don't want that illness. But if we don't know the causes and conditions of that illness, merely not wanting the resulting undesirable sickness and its suffering does not make them go away. For this reason, the main thing, even when we want to gain happiness, we don't know how to accomplish the causes of happiness. We want to be free of suffering, but do not know how to give up the causes of suffering. This is the difficulty we face. So our wishes and our practice are at odds with each other, or you could say that our wishes have gone out of harmony with the nature of things. That generally, any being, no matter who they are, looks to see if they can bring about the causes of happiness insofar as they know them. They try to abandon the causes of suffering insofar as they know them. And especially with us humans, we are different from other sentient beings such as animals. We have the intelligence to see what we should do and what we should give up. The ability to discern good from bad in a way that other beings do not. For that reason, we humans have what is, in particular, what is called in the Buddhist scriptures, the precious human body. The precious human body is called precious because merely attaining a human body means that we have the ability to distinguish what we should do from what we should not. But it is not just that. We cannot know whether merely attaining a human body means that it will be a precious, meaningful human body. For a precious human body to be meaningful, just as we want happiness, we should know how to accomplish the causes of happiness. Just as we don't want suffering, we should know how to give up the cause of suffering, misdeeds. If that is the case, then we will have a human body that is truly precious. That human body, precious human body, then becomes meaningful. For that reason, the main point is that we need to know what to do and what to give up. We want happiness, and what we don't want is suffering. But merely wanting or not wanting does not help. What is most important is that we know how to take up or give up their causes. We know how to take up or give up their results, but we don't know how to take up or give up their causes. Thus it is important for us to take up or give up their causes. All of the things that the Buddhist scriptures tell us to do that we should do or not do primarily come down to this point. So this is our situation. And that being so, the topic for today is how to do the practice of Avalokiteshvara. With noble Avalokiteshvara, for all Buddhists, and especially Mahayana Buddhists, so what we need to understand is that Avalokiteshvara, for all Buddhists, and especially for Mahayana Buddhists, whether we're Tibetan Buddhists or Buddhists in the Chinese traditions, probably there isn't a single Mahayana Buddhist, someone who, in that tradition, who hasn't heard his name. Now, many people think Avalokiteshvara is a god of some sort. That's what they understand him to be. But what is Avalokiteshvara actually? Normally we explain that Avalokiteshvara is the name of a bodhisattva. But actually, when we say practicing Avalokiteshvara, what we should understand that as meaning. In terms of his name, in terms of his Tibetan name Chenrezig, it means gazing upon us with his eyes. This means that 6 times each day and night, he gazes upon all sentient beings in the 6 realms with his loving, compassionate eyes. In any case, we should understand it as meaning that at no time does he ever give up the wish to care for and treasure human beings, or sentient beings. So in brief, the practice of Avalokiteshvara is the practice of loving kindness and compassion. It is not like we are accomplishing a god. When we say accomplishing a deity, many people think that accomplishing a deity means that we pray to a god, or that we prostrate to the god, or make them offerings. That's how they understand it. But actually, practicing Avalokiteshvara does not mean that there's some god over there whom we respect and worship, to whom we offer prostrations and oblations. Avalokiteshvara means improving the qualities of loving kindness and compassion that are present within our own mind streams. It means intensifying that and transforming ourselves into a person who has loving kindness and compassion, a person with true altruism. That is what we should understand practicing Avalokiteshvara to mean. Therefore, we should start our practice of Avalokiteshvara with that basis, with such a fundamental understanding of what it means to practice Avalokiteshvara. If we don't have that fundamental understanding, merely saying that we practice Avalokiteshvara, merely knowing how to recite his mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, and when asked what Avalokiteshvara is, merely replying that he's a bodhisattva with 4 arms, just knowing that and saying that does not help. The main thing is that the practice of Avalokiteshvara means knowing in our minds that meditation on Avalokiteshvara is a practice of loving kindness and compassion, a practice of Bodhichitta. That is how we should understand practicing Avalokiteshvara or manifesting Avalokiteshvara. For these reasons, on a fundamental level, it is extremely important that we take up that view and think in that way before we begin Avalokiteshvara practice. This is the understanding and the view that we should hold when we begin. Now, and in particular, in Tibet, there are many different Avalokiteshvara sadhanas, both long and short. And there are many Avalokiteshvara sadhanas that were translated from Sanskrit into Tibetan. But among all of those various sadhanas, and the one that we practice, is the sadhana written by the Mahasiddha Tangtong Gyalpo called All-Pervading Benefit for Beings. The way we practice the sadhana has 6 points, or 6 sections. We can call them points or sections. In other words, we have these 6 parts that we divide the practice into. And that's when we have to divide it into those 6 sections when we practice. The first section is the preparation, rousing bodhicitta, refuge and bodhicitta. Following that are the main practice of visualizing the deity. This morning I will discuss the first of these 3, the preparation of rousing bodhicitta. When we say we're going for rousing bodhicitta, it's considered very important in the Buddhist tradition. And the reason for this is that what determines whether we are Buddhist or not, what distinguishes Buddhist from not Buddhist, the boundary is going for refuge. And so what it determines, or the boundary between being Mahayana and not, is having relative bodhicitta within our mind stream. So these are 2 really critical points. The first is that whether we are a Buddhist comes down to going for refuge. Whether we are Mahayana or not comes down to having bodhicitta. So these are the most important points. They're like the foundation. So what is going for refuge? So if we talk about it simply, it is going for refuge to the 3 jewels. The Buddha is the one who teaches us the path. The Buddha is the one who shows us the path and says, go that way, who points us the way. That's the Buddha. Dharma means the path that we have to go along. The path that we go down is the Dharma. The Sangha means our companions when we are going down the path. The friends or fellow travelers who go down the path along with us. So this is how it is when we compare it to going down a path. Or otherwise we can compare it to a sick person. So comparing it to a sick person, then the Buddha is like the doctor. The Dharma is like the medicine. And the Sangha is the people who help you. The people who help you and nurse you when you are sick. That's the Sangha. So this is comparing refuge to the situation of a person who is ill. So in this way we can compare it to many different situations. We can look at it in many different ways, using many different comparisons to come to an understanding of it. So in brief, the main thing is that when we say the Buddha, that's like we universally accepted that he's someone who appeared 2,500 years ago, historical. This was the historical Buddha who appeared 2,400 years ago. So this is the one that we see in the history. So that's the one who showed us the path. It's the person who showed us the path. Saying, this is the path. If you want to achieve the state of liberation, this is the way you must go. He's the one who showed us the path. Now, the path that he showed us, the Dharma, or the method for achieving liberation and omniscience, that method is the Dharma. Our companions or helpers while we practice the Dharma, or the Sangha. So in brief, when you think about the nature of how it was, the Buddha is briefly, if we talk about it historically, from that perspective, the Buddha is a being who appeared 2,500 years ago. But if we talk about it in terms of our current situation and ask who the Buddha is, then the Buddha is like a representative or an emissary of the Buddha is our spiritual friend. The spiritual friend who shows us the path without any mistakes is like a representative or emissary of the Buddha. Instructions that the spiritual teacher gives us or teaches us, the spiritual advice on how to accomplish liberation and omniscience, is the Dharma. And when we practice the Dharma, all of the people who encourage us and help us, sometimes they help us in terms of the Dharma, sometimes they're people who help us materially, and anyways, all of them are like the Sangha. In any case, all three jewels must be present. For example, if a sick person is to be cured of illness, they need to go to a doctor, they need medicine and nurses and so forth. All of them have to be there. Likewise, we have to have all three jewels. They have to be present. In brief, we need to come to good understanding of going for refuge. Going for refuge does not mean merely saying, I go for refuge to the Buddha, save me, Buddha. It is not merely a prayer, a supplication we say orally. It's something we need to put into practice. It is an action. This is a spiritual teacher who shows me the path. I need to listen to this spiritual teacher. I need to think of them as a spiritual teacher. I need to feel longing and respect for them as my spiritual teacher. We need to recognize that the directions they have given us are what we really need to put into practice. Likewise, we need to recognize that our companions are all the people who support us and help us in practicing virtue. Truly recognizing this is important. And merely reciting the Refuge Prayer is not enough. It's important to really recognize it. So next is Bodhichitta. This means relative Bodhichitta, the wish to bring all sentient beings to the state of Buddhahood. It's said to be the wish to bring all sentient beings to the state of Buddhahood. As it is said, it's the... Or you can say, Bodhicitta is the wish for perfect enlightenment for others' sake. It is seeking one's own perfect enlightenment for the sake of bringing all sentient beings to achieve Buddhahood. So when you talk about Bodhicitta, whether we are a Bodhisattva or not, whether we are Mahayana or not, comes down to Bodhicitta. We often speak about the presentation of the foundation vehicle in the Mahayana. The presentation of the foundation vehicle or the Mahayana is not primarily about one view being higher than the other. It is determined by the scope of our intentions. In terms of the view, among the Shravaka disciples, there are some who have realized emptiness, so we cannot distinguish the foundation of the Mahayana in terms of the view. What distinguishes the foundation in the Mahayana is the scope of our intention, the scale of our intentions. The scope of our intentions, if we emphasize it in practice, then... Now when we say there are sometimes different ways we can understand the scope of our intentions, but mainly what we mean in this context is how much responsibility we can take upon ourselves. Mahayana means someone who can take upon themselves an extremely large responsibility. That's why it's called the Mahayana. Someone who can carry that type of responsibility. But someone who can carry a lesser responsibility in comparison to that is Hinayana, or foundation vehicle. Therefore, what determines Mahayana, or foundation vehicle, is how much responsibility we can carry. This is why it is said that what distinguishes the Mahayana and the foundation vehicle is Bodhicitta. So for that reason, Bodhicitta actually is a question we need to pose to ourselves within our own minds. We need to look and see how much courage and how much resolve we actually have. We need to examine ourselves. We need to look at ourselves. The extent of it is not something we can show to anyone else. Usually when we talk about the size or extent of something, we think about the amount of wealth or the extent of one's popularity. When you talk about the size or extent of something, it's like we have to turn our mind, direct our mind outwards and have something to show to something else, someone else. But here, Mahayana and Foundation Vehicle is not something we can show to anyone else. It is turning our attention inward toward our own mind. Do I have that much courage or not? Can I bear that much responsibility or not? That is what we need to look at. If we are able to take that much responsibility, then we are Mahayana. If we aren't able to, then we aren't Mahayana. So even if we present ourselves to others as if we were Mahayana practitioners, in actuality, we wouldn't be Mahayana. So for this reason, going for refuge and arousing bodhicitta is critical. It is included among our preliminary dharmas. So when we say a preliminary dharma, many people think that it must be less important, that the main practice is something that is more profound and more important. That's how we understand it. But actually, the way things really are, the preliminaries are the foundation. When you're building a house, most of the expense goes initially into laying the foundation. You need to have a really stable foundation. If the foundation is good, then the actual practice, the house, will be able to sit stably. If we don't lay a good foundation, the actual practice, the house, will never be stable. So therefore, we say for these reasons in our Kagyu tradition that the preliminaries are more profound than the main practice. So the preliminaries are more profound than the main practice, you should say. It's the preliminaries that are more profound. That's what's profound, or more profound, less profound. It's also said in the Kadampa teachings, if you do not realize death and impermanence, Guhya Samaja is not profound. If you understand death and impermanence, then the 3 lines of going for refuge are profound. If you don't realize death and impermanence, which is the preliminary practice, right? If you don't realize that, then Guhya Samaja is not profound. It won't be profound for that individual. It won't have any power or benefit for that individual. If you realize death and impermanence, there's no need for such vast practices such as Guhya Samaja. Even if you know nothing besides the 3 lines of going for refuge, those 3 verses will have benefit and power for you. So for this reason, going for refuge and rousing bodhicitta is a critical point. Now, in the context of this practice of the sanada, of the sadhana, we need to explain the visualization. So the way to do the visualization is taught like this. And what it says is that in the sky in front of you there is a beautiful white cloud. And on top of it there are many rainbows and beams of light, like forming a tent, making really beautiful, attractive patterns. And on the other side of that, and slightly elevated, there is a flower that seems to, in our minds, to be so extremely attractive and like thoroughly delightful. And in the middle of that environment, you should imagine that there is a noble Avalokiteshvara, inseparable from your own Guru. Imagine that he's present there, inseparable from your root Guru. That noble Avalokiteshvara is not like a single individual or person sitting over there. He's the essence of all the 3 jewels, all the Buddhas of the 10 directions, and all the Bodhisattvas, all emanating in the form of a single individual, a single Bodhisattva. What we see is just a single Bodhisattva, but we think that he is all the Bodhisattvas and Bodhisattvas combined into one, an emanation of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, which is like in the form of a single Bodhisattva. And we think that in front of him we are there, that we are there where he is looking. where He can see us. And around us, it's not just us alone. Within this lifetime, there are many people whom we love who are close to our hearts. There are many people like that. And there are also many people we don't like, or people who disgust us. And there are also many people with whom we don't have much of a connection at all. There's many of those as we need. There are quite a few of these people, and we imagine that they are all together with us. So we don't distinguish between friend or enemy, or divide them into groups or factions. We're all gathered as one group. Within this life, we might not actually have such good connections, or we might have no connection to them at all. But in terms of the way things actually are, we're all the same in wanting happiness and wanting to be free of suffering. So in that respect, we are all the same. So since we are all the same, we're all in the same boat. We imagine that we're all together. We think that we're all, not just me alone, all of us need to be freed from suffering. It's not just me, everyone is. We all need to be brought happiness. Therefore we are saying, please give us the capacity for achieving it, or the power to achieve it. Guru Avalokiteshvara, please grant me that ability. In this way, we have to put 100% of our hopes on Avalokiteshvara. And while we are doing that, we recite the verse for going for refuge. At this point, when we say there's a visualization, there are some people who are just unable to visualize. It's just naturally part of their physical constitution. There are people who, whenever they're told they should visualize or imagine in such a way, they're just unable to do it. And sometimes people have the difficulty that they can't do it there, but it's really complicated, and the image just doesn't come to them. But I think that the primary thing is really not the image that comes. What's foremost is the feeling that you have in your mind, as I said before. So you really feel like the Guru Avalokiteshvara is there, close, alive, and present. Even if you can't think about so many different colors, or robes, or accoutrements, you think that he is present, and that everyone near there, friends and enemies, all our parents, all sentient beings who have gathered together us without any distinction between friend and enemy, are all there. Together, all of us bring out what our true desire is. We say it to Avalokiteshvara. We all have that same one wish. And that wish is to find happiness and to be free of suffering. We think that we are all praying with the same wish. And in this way, we go for refuge with really great longing. And then we recite there's the usual prayer that we write, and that's called the one called in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. I take a refuge until attaining enlightenment. Through the merit of practicing generosity and so on, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit beings. And we can say that. This is the most common one. And I think most of you already probably know this verse. You can recite that one. Or you can write the particular refuge prayer written by the Siddha Tantong Gyalpa, the Iron Bridge Builder. So it's also to recite that prayer from the lineage of Tantong Gyalpa, the Iron Bridge Builder. In any case, you can say either. The words make no difference. The most important point is how we should think about it. The way we think is the most important thing. For example, to illustrate with the usual prayer, in the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until attaining enlightenment. So here we say the Buddha and the Dharma, and we say especially the Supreme Assembly. As that we say Supreme Assembly in particular, is that we should understand that as meaning the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. So if we don't understand the difference or not, whether we know it or not, we should think that bodhisattvas are the Sangha. It's fine to think of whether we know the difference or not. We think that from now until we achieve Buddhahood, from lifetime after lifetime, we'll go for refuge. For the merit of practicing this meditation may achieve Buddhahood in order to benefit the beings. So even now, if I only do a single virtuous act, whether being generous or maintaining discipline or so forth, the aim of it is to bring all sentient beings in 6 realms to achieve Buddhahood. It means that for the sake of all sentient beings, I'm going to do it so that all beings may achieve Buddhahood. It means doing it imbued with Bodhichitta. So in any case, it's fine to recite the verse, I'm going for refuge 3 times, or even once is fine. But in any case, it really depends upon how much time and how much feeling you have in your mind. In any case, we go for refuge, and then once we've gone for refuge, we then rouse Bodhichitta. And after that, with the strong certainty that we and all sentient beings have now been brought under protection. We have committed our minds 100%. We think that Noble Avalokiteshvara cares for us 100%. He's caring for us. He's taking care of us. He's taking us on, and He will treat us well. We need to have really stable trust and certainty, real comfort in this. We really need to examine ourselves to see whether we truly have that well or not. So that's one point. I'm going for refuge. And similarly, after we've gone for refuge, then the next thing is, oh, wait a minute, there's one thing I forgot to say. So that is how we think about while we reciting. As we say, in the Buddha Dharma and the Supreme Assembly, go for refuge until I achieve Buddhahood. And so through the merit of practicing generosity and so on, I may practice Buddhahood with the same of others. Now when we think about Bodhicitta, there's a difference. When we go for refuge, we primarily direct our attention to the Avalokiteshvara in the sky in front of ourselves. Then when we think about Bodhicitta, we primarily direct our attention to the people, sentient beings who are either before us or the beings who are to our either side who are all around us. We think about all sentient. We think about sentient beings. It's fine to think that there's not even a single one among them who has never been a parent. But if we think about it in that way, we have to believe in past and future lives, and that can be quite complicated. But if we cannot think that way, every one of them wants to become happy and give up suffering. There's no difference at all. They're all the same. They all want to abandon suffering, but they don't know how to create the causes for abandoning suffering. In addition to that, they only accomplish the causes for suffering. That's all they do. They only gather the causes that will bring suffering, the misdeeds. And so what result will come from that? No other result than suffering could possibly come. Therefore, for all sentient beings, with ourselves format, we could call it the unexcelled happiness or the supreme, the highest happiness. We're not seeking the temporary happiness of bringing ourselves like a famous name, or plentiful food and drink, or great wealth and prosperity. What we absolutely must have is the ultimate happiness, the highest happiness, the unchanging happiness, and that is the state of Buddhahood. We absolutely must achieve that. If we do not achieve that, and we stay only enjoying ourselves, creating the causes of suffering, we might have the thought, wouldn't it be wonderful for all sentient beings to achieve that highest happiness? But one wondering, what can I do? We don't have any. We don't really have any power, ability to bring that out. And since we lack that power, I think, I will practice the practice of Noble Avalokiteshvara. I will learn about Noble Avalokiteshvara. I will practice put the practice of noble Avalokiteshvara, the practice of loving kindness and compassion, into true practice, into effect. And we think, I'll put effort into becoming just like noble Avalokiteshvara. We should arouse Bodhichitta with such fervent longing. And so that's how we should arouse Bodhichitta. And so once we have done that, we then recite the words. So here we say it's the merit of practicing this meditation. So when we're doing this practice, instead of practicing generosity and so forth, we say practicing this meditation. The intent of this is because the merit of visualizing Avalokiteshvara's body, reciting his mantra and so forth, on this occasion, at this time, may I achieve the level of Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. And so we recite these words of Bodhicitta aloud. You can write these lines a few times, depending upon your time, and so forth. And so you've gone for refuge, and you've aroused Bodhicitta. Then next, what you should think is that the body of Avalokiteshvara, the way you should think is that from the body of Avalokiteshvara, you have been visualizing the sky in front of you. There shine many rays of light. There's like incredibly many beautiful and extremely bright rays of light shine forth from his body. And it strikes you and all sentient beings. And the moment these rays touch you, strike you, and all sentient beings, you think that all sentient beings have been purified of misdeeds, and their happinesses have been eliminated, and you've all been made happy. So you should believe this, and in order to increase your enthusiasm, it's not like it's going to happen immediately, it's not going to be immediately limited, but sometimes when we are sad, we always think about sad situations. And when you're happy, we think about a lot of happy situations. We usually have a lot of thoughts, and this is the way we usually think, isn't it? Similarly, we can think in this way to increase our own enthusiasm. And so in the end, the noble Avalokiteshvara also turns into the nature of light and dissolves into you. And once he's dissolved into you, then all the stains, and all the stains of your body, speech, and mind, all the impurities of your body, speech, and mind, and all the unbeneficial aspects of your body, speech, and mind are removed. And the power, the ability of your body, speech, and mind are increased. They gain great ability to act for others' benefit. You imagine all that this has happened. This is what you should do. This is primarily the visualization of the preliminary, going for refuge and arousing Bodhicitta. I think it's probably best to leave it here for this morning. And the reason for this is that it does say in the schedule that the session should be 2 hours. But if we talk about 2 hours, normally 2 hours is kind of long. It's really difficult for the translators. And for me as the teacher, when we say 2 hours, well, for the teachers there's no particular difficulty because you're thinking about what to say, wondering whether you'll have the time to say everything you want to say. You don't really know how much time has gone by. But for the audience, sometimes if it is too long, you might get a little bored, right? And so for this reason, I usually don't teach for too long. So I think that is enough for now. So once again, I was not actually able to come to Toronto as planned. And for my own part, I feel really extremely sorry about it. But I do hope that I hope that you all understand. Generally, my physical condition really hasn't been all that great from the time that I arrived in America last year until the present. There's nothing terribly wrong, but it's like my body has become kind of weak. And I have also had a lot of things to think about, and to worry about. Because of that, my physical health has not been as strong. And so and in addition to that, I also have so many worries and a lot of pressure. So when you put the two together, it's a little bit difficult for me. So I'd like to beg all of you for your forgiveness. So we will continue the teaching this afternoon. And so another thing to say in particular is that on the last afternoon, we're supposed to have the empowerment of Avalokiteshvara. This is according to this schedule. But since I can't actually be there, if I tried to give the Avalokiteshvara empowerment over a live webcast, it would be a bit strange. So if you had a really powerful Lama, you had a really authentic guru, and qualified students, then it would probably be okay. But these days, in the age when the 5 degenerations are rampant, there's so many people who do all sorts of different things. So if I were to say that I were giving an empowerment over a live webcast, and you would pretend that I was doing it, and I would also pretend I was giving it, it would be kind of like more like a performance. So you won't have the empowerment. But there is the meditation transmission of Avalokiteshvara. It's kind of like an empowerment. There's no putting the vase on your head or anything like that. But we do the sadhana of Avalokiteshvara by repeating it. You repeating after me. And as we repeat it, I give explanations, and so we repeat, give explanations. We alternate between the explanations and the repeating the words. And that's what we call a meditation transmission. It would be good to do that. Perhaps it's even better than an empowerment, because sometimes with empowerments, it takes a long time to give the proper explanations, but we don't have enough time. So I recite the empowerment quickly. So it's possible that there might be some potential blessing, but it's not visible to the naked eye. We can't see it. But, what we can see and feel is that when the Lama gives an explanation, perhaps there's a bit of a difference in what we can see and what we can feel. And so I think that'll work out better. So I'd like to say thank you to all of you.
So